When they asked me to come speak at this conference, they told me that I had 20 minutes, but by my watch and according to the break time, I now have 40. So I apologize in advance. No, I'm not going to go on that far. I'm going to give you the FP2 update today. And again, it is great to see a lot of these smiling faces again. It's been a couple of years since you guys have been together. And we love seeing you guys. First of all, let's talk about the agenda. We're going to talk about FP2 overview. We're going to talk a little bit about the Pavement Preservation Group study at Minroads and NCAT and a little performance snapshot. We're not going to get as far into the weeds as Dr. Vargas did, but we're going to show you about FP2's involvement there. We're going to talk a little bit about the FP2 outreach through the Pavement Preservation Journal, our advocacy efforts. We're going to mention the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and talk a little bit about our legislative efforts, and then we're going to have some closing comments. So what is FP2? Who's it made up of? We've got equipment manufacturers, chemical suppliers, associations, material suppliers, and contractors. Those are our contributors that afford us the opportunity and the funding to support things like the National Center for Pavement Preservation and our research efforts. Without those contributors, we couldn't do much. And we're going to get right on into the preservation group study because this is one of the big things we've been working on since 2012. But in reality, the discussions about that research project started in like 2009 and 2010. It became more of a possibility. 2011, we knew it was going to happen, and we laid the groundwork in place. FP2 had a great committee put together that worked with NCAT and Dr. Buzz to help shape that study to what it has become today. So the ultimate goal back then was to develop a life cycle curve as compared to pretreatment condition. We wanted to measure the pavement life extension of that treated pavement, and they've done that in multiple ways. We'll talk about the evaluation measures here in a minute. And then we wanted to compare the treatment to the control sections, not necessarily treatment to treatment, but we wanted to do it against the control section, and we're still doing that today. And something that we really didn't anticipate at the beginning was not only we knew about the life extending benefits that we were gonna evaluate, but the condition improving benefits, the friction values, the IRI increase, and like Dr. Vargas talked about earlier, we see that initial improvement, and then the IRIs have flatlined. They've maintained that same IRI over nearly 10 years now. Now that's an enormous bonus that we really, at the beginning, we didn't conceive of that being a possibility. So that came at a later date, but it was good. We did the warm climates like she talked about, Lee Road 159, which was a low volume but a high truck traffic road, asphalt plant and a rock quarry at the end of it. How many people here have been to Lee Road 159? Okay, so a good many of you in the crowd, you guys have walked it, and I call it the Kick in the Rocks tour. That road is doing fantastic out there, even though it was not, in most people's mind, considered to be the optimum pavement condition for a pavement preservation treatment. But the fact that Dr. Vargas and Dr. Buzz broke it down into the 40 segments per section, you had good, fair, and poor in that helped us evaluate it a little bit better. So, but it's doing really good. Then we went out to, we did some on the accelerated loading facility, and then also the high volume traffic out at US 280, still doing very good. And then, of course, the sections in Minnesota, US 169 and CASA 8. Again, respectively, I think 169 is 4,500 ADT, and CASA 8 is 750. So pretty close to the same thing that you see in Alabama. And here's kind of a timeline. You can see all the processes when they took place over a period of time. But again, the original talks started back in 2009. Another interesting fact, when this process started, you had 7 DOT people that were going to be sponsors and FP2, which was the industry sponsor. It was originally going to be a 3-year study, and now we're into our 10th year. So, and we continue to evaluate it. And like Dr. Vargas said, we're going to continue to evaluate these 145 sections until December of 23. But what's really interesting is people saw the value of it. And now we have 22 state DOTs and FHWA that are involved in this research project. So that's the enormity of the deal. And I think all these other state DOTs saw the value in joining in and getting that information. Evaluation measures, you've got cracking, rutting, IRI, the ground penetrating radar, FWDs, moisture probes, macro texture friction, binder oxidation of the underlying pavement, and permeability. We don't get to talk about all those. We don't have near the time to talk about them, so we talk about the 3 MAP 21 issues: rutting, IRI, and cracking. But I think when you start implementing this and putting this information into your pavement management systems, if you can gather some of that other information, it may help you in your decision-making process to get the most bang for your buck and pick the right treatment for the right pavement at the right time. Okay, again, the performance snapshot, she showed you what I used to have in this presentation, but I took out because I knew she was going to show it. That interactive tool that she has at ncat.us is fantastic. You can go in and pick any section on that roadway and choose good, for, or good, fair, or poor, and it extrapolates that information out for you and will help you make good decisions. But again, FP2 and its contributors will continue to fund this through the end of 2023. We will sit on the technical advisory panel that will help shape the final report on that thing. It's 10 years going and going strong, and probably no end in sight as far as the performance of many of those treatments. And the thing that's really important is that the data that we've gathered during this research project far exceeds what any of the survey data that our pavement management systems have relied upon for years has shown. So no survey shows that you're going to get 10 years worth of performance out of a single or a double chip seal or a double microsurfacing, but yet the proof is in the pudding, and we're seeing those results right now. Now, let's move over to communications. We currently have about 5,000 subscribers that actually get the Pavement Preservation Journal magazine, which if you'll go to the FP2 booth, I've got a bunch of these set out over there. Grab as many of them as you want. What's neat about it is about 76% of our subscribers are agencies, DOTs, local agencies, things of that nature. Of course, we've also got about another 3,100 subscribers that take the online version. So we're over 8,000 people that are getting that magazine, and that is increasing every day. Many trade magazines are decreasing in their readership, and the Pavement Preservation Journal is increasing. So that's a good thing. Our advocacy efforts. Obviously, we continue to advocate for pavement preservation. We've got a legislative language task force that develops our legislative proposal. Ultimately, the goal is awareness of pavement preservation. We want pavement preservation to be deployed more consistently around the country. And we want to let agencies know that preservation is a solution, especially when it comes to environmental concerns such as global warming or greenhouse gas emissions, cost savings, and then other things we talked about today, which is safety. You can see here, this information came from 3 studies that took place back in 2010, and FP2 committee put this together that kind of shows, over a 76% less greenhouse gas emission over a 45-year period of time when you're using preservation over rehabilitative type approaches. And not only that, you're seeing a huge cost difference. About 40% of the cost is a big savings as well. So these are the kinds of things that FP2 is putting together, and we're putting in front of the legislators up on the Hill. And of course, this is important to local agencies as well. Okay, we want to prioritize our policy goals, and we need to articulate the Federal Highway Administration's Pavement Preservation Strategic Plan, as Jason just mentioned. And we want to support any research out there as it relates to preservation and our greenhouse gas benefits associated with those treatments. And as we all would like to see, we would like to see the Highway Trust Fund fully funded in perpetuity. 2021, a year in review. As we well know, 2020 was tough. 2021 was even tougher, in my opinion. As far as a private contractor, we had more obstacles to contend with last year than we actually did in 2020. And some of those were being able to get together and meet with people. That was an enormous hindrance to getting things done in this world. So what we have to do, we had to resort to different things, the Zoom, the GoToMeetings, Microsoft Teams. You guys did the same thing, and many of you are still using those tools today. We sponsored webinars with our partners at PPRA, the National Center for pavement preservation. And Jason, thank you so much for what you guys do with your program. I know you reach a lot of people, but within that subset of people, you reach the right people. And that's what's important. You know, if 10 people out of 100 are the right people, then you're doing a great job, and I believe you're getting that done. We do the online forum sponsored by industry, the Highway Users Alliance, and FHWA. We continue to advocate for industry in Congress and with the administration, and we communicate with congressional leaders and members advocating for pavement preservation and the passage of a long-term highway reauthorization bill. Now, this is what's important, and a lot of folks, especially our contributors, are really not aware of this. Last year, we had over 100 meetings, FP2 and our lobbyists, with folks on the Hill promoting pavement preservation. That's not going to change just because of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We know that it's still going to be a little bit of a battle, so we've still got to get in there and rub elbows and make sure we're doing the right thing. Continuing along, the National Center for Pavement Preservation up at Michigan State. We're going to work closely with them, and we're going to financially support them into the future, and as well as AASHTO and TSP2 program. They did hold an annual conference, a virtual conference in May of 2021. As you saw the numbers that Bazid put up, very well attended. We obviously, as FP2, we want to welcome Bazid to the fold and thank Judy for all she's done. They're both great to work with. And then, I've talked enough about the NCAT Minroad stuff. We're going to remain very involved in that through the technical advisory panel. We'll be at the conference in May. What's the dates in May again? Do you remember? May the 12th is another sponsors meeting down at Auburn, where everybody will get to walk Lee Road, and it's right there in that area. But we can look at the website and find that out. Bipartisan infrastructure bill, they finally funded it. $350.8 billion over 5 years, 34% increase over the baseline spending, 40+ billion over the next 5 years, much to be distributed through discretionary programs. That's where we're going to have to stay involved. And of course, there's going to be some additional research monies and modifications to the research programs. They may even tie some of this to some global warming type initiatives. I look to see some of that. And so basically, it's like a reauthorization on steroids, and we're going to have to continue to work with them to make sure things go the right way. So we're going to work with the DOT and the White House to find ways to move the DOT's preservation strategy forward. But the DOT is also going to have great discretion on how to develop these programs. So again, they're building the plane while they're flying it. They want to submit pavement preservation suggestions on IIJA through FHWA requests for information process. You can probably get with Tony or Jason. They can tell you how to do that, but they're looking for information on that now. And we want to work with outside coalitions to ensure comments that support pavement preservation strategies. Future legislation, explicit carbon programs to include pavement technology, including design, materials, and practices that reduce carbon emissions. That's what I alluded to a minute ago. I think we all know that that's coming down the pike, and these preservation treatments definitely excel in that environment. We're going to move forward, not only working with the DOTs, but with the state and local agencies. We're going to work with DOT to identify any areas where pavement preservation can be expanded to meet the goals outlined in the strategic plan. And we're going to identify and address any areas where there might be problems accessing funding for pavement preservations under the new law. So as those things come to our attention, we're going to work on them. So in closing comments, advocating the benefits of pavement preservation, that's what we do day in and day out. We're going to continue that. We're going to continue our involvement in pavement preservation research as we had since the beginning. We're also going to continue to communicate the unmistakable advantages of pavement preservation. None of that would be possible without our very gracious contributors. You can see the corporate sponsors on the left side of the slide and our industry sponsors on the right side of the slide. Again, they're very gracious, and without them, we would not have the opportunity to do what we do. Those 100 visits on the Hill would not happen. Our involvement, for the last 12 years in the Pavement Preservation Group study wouldn't have happened. Pavement Preservation Journal wouldn't be there with all of that good information that gets out to the agencies that subscribe to it. So these are the people that actually make that happen. Congratulations and thank you to them. And then also, many of you notice that I'm not Jim Moulthrop, who would normally be giving this presentation. He's much wiser, much more handsome, and much more well-spoken than I. but he's retired. We all know that. Jim went to pasture not long ago. We're going to miss him dearly. He has been a great executive director. I had an opportunity to present Jim with an award at TRB, and I had a room that had more people than this in it, and I asked how many people knew Jim, and I think everybody in the room raised their hand. So he's very well known, very knowledgeable about everything from materials to construction to just about everything. So we're going to miss Jim dearly, but we also wish him the best of luck in his years of retirement. And I told him I'd like to see a picture of him boarding a Viking River cruise over in Europe, because I know he really enjoys those things. But I also, at this point, after thanking Jim, I want to recognize Rick Church. Many of you may know him, may not know Rick. Rick has been tasked with becoming the new executive director for FP2. Rick's also the executive director of ERA, EMA, and ISSA, and brings to FP2 a ton of resources that will help us kind of keep our house in order and put together packages in our strategic plan that we're going to go and have in May, and where I think our objectives will remain the same, but how we dole out some of Jim's old chores that he used to do without help of the board now are going to have to be taken care of the board. So we want to welcome Rick. So next time you see him, give him a welcome, and he's going to do us a fine job. And with that, I didn't take nearly 40 minutes. So if you guys would like to discuss something, we can do that, or we can go to break. Perfect. Thank you for your time.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.